Do you want Sam to mute himself really quick, Michelle, or does it matter?
I think we can just go right into it.
Let's dive right into
Yeah.
it. Why don't you do the intro? Like get us going. This is typically how it goes, Sam, for about 3 or 4 hours, and then we interview the guests.
No worry.
Yeah, so I hope you have nothing planned for your Friday.
That's okay. I'll kick it off and say, well, this is how the arts were won, episode 2, season 2. You know what? I'm gonna talk as little as possible, and we'll get right to the guests. Because you tell the people out there what you've been busy doing in Texas.
Well, so from April 10th through 12th of this month, we had a huge 3-day conference on global media in diplomacy and foreign policy, which really is fitting with our guest today and the book that he wrote, How to Win the War on Truth. And we had a lot of speakers who were talking about propaganda, about disinformation, misinformation, cyber warfare, you name it, we had it. And we had 60 plus speakers from around the world. And I do mean around the world. And it was just this disinfo extravaganza.
Did you organize it?
I conceived, organized, did everything that you could pretty much think of. I mean, I had a really great team, definitely. But on the whole, yeah, I decided I wanted to do this in January, and yeah, it happened.
What was your favorite piece of disinformation?
Oh, my favorite piece of disinformation. Oh, okay. So there was a panel on ChatGPT. The presenter was a student at the University of Texas, and he had himself gone into one of these ChatGPT programs called Historical Figures, I believe. And he chatted with Robert E. Lee. And I'm really hoping I'm getting this right and not spreading my own misinformation here. But he had several children. But so the student asked Robert E. Lee through this program.
I'm sorry, Robert E. Lee, the Civil War guy?
Yeah, the Civil War guy.
Okay.
Asked him, did you have sexual relations? And and because this was kind of playing off the whole Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton thing somehow, it responded, no, I did not have sexual intercourse with either gender, and which is really funny. And then the student was like, well, hang on, you had 7 children. How did you have 7 children? And yeah, so it was really hilarious. I mean, the transcript of the conversation, like this kid, like he displayed it and everything. It was amazing. The ChatGPT just kept on like trying to rationalize why it lied in the first place, and then said it was inappropriate. It boiled down to, it was inappropriate in my time, Robert E. Lee's time, to be talking about sex in any way, shape, or form. But the fact was it lied, So yeah, that was my favorite.
Listeners, I'm glad I didn't fly out, but it sounds fascinating. Regardless, you know what? I have so many thoughts on AI, and it's not even worth getting into because I think it's all a bunch of sky is falling hysteria for the time being. But you know who would be good to answer any questions at the end about AI and as it pertains to putting news out there and putting creative works out there is our guest, who is Samuel Spitale. You know what? I didn't ask him if I pronounced his last name right, so I'll ask him in a second. But if you're wondering who Samuel Spitale is, if that is how I pronounce his last name, he is the author of How to Win the War on Truth, an illustrated guide to how mistruths are sold, why they stick, and how to reclaim reality. How's that for a title?
It's a great
title. Shorten it for the movie version. He is based here in LA. He's a writer, a storyteller, a media studies expert with degrees in advertising and media management. He's written for the Huffington Post, Geek Magazine, Star Wars Insider. I believe he's a Star Wars expert, by the way. I don't put words into his mouth, but he's also written for advocate.com, and he is a member of American Mensa and the Hollywood Radio and Television Society Associates, which I'm not sure what that is. So I'm going to ask him that one too.
Well, let's bring him on.
Well, he's already here because it's Zoom.
Oh,
hey, Sam.
Hey, good to be here.
Is it?
It is.
Good. glad. I left out one important thing too. He was also a finalist in the 2020 Book Pipeline unpublished season, and that is how I know him. He submitted this book. He later got it published, and now he's here. That is the short version.
Wow,
of
fantastic.
that. And it's a fantastic book.
Yes.
Go and buy it. I'm going to say it right now because our listen rate probably drops down about the midpoint because we tend to go long. So, Sam, thank you for taking the time.
Of course.
I'm going to dive right in and ask if I got your last name right.
Yeah, you're pretty good. Spitale. Okay. So Spitale. I'll answer to you.
Is it Italian?
It is.
I see. We're all Italian here, but Michelle's not, but she's married to one, so that's fine.
That is true. Have any of our guests not been Italian?
A lot, wasn't it? The last one. A lot is.
That's
Israeli,
true.
So.
He's Israeli.
See? Now that we've cleared that up, I have 4,000 questions for you, Sam, and I know we've gone through a few things already, but I want to start with the very, very basic question of why did you write this book and why did you make it illustrated?
Sure. So the book kind of came out of conversations I was having with friends and family after the 2016 election. I grew up in the Deep South in Louisiana. And so around the election, I felt like I was doing nothing but arguing with people back home over things that were not true or real. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, the conversations were a little more than frustrating. And so
this was a heavily Republican crowd, I'm assuming.
Yeah, but even with the ones that aren't, I mean, so, in the Deep South, like politics, culture, religion, like it's all so intertwined, whatever your political stance is, there's just, I don't know, I feel like we grew up in the South believing so many things that are not true or accurate. Mm-hmm. They're more myth-based. Anyway, there's just, a lot of mistruths floating around. And so the older I get, I feel like the more I'm, the more I have a better understanding of the truth and which things are true and which things we've just been led to believe because someone benefits from them. And so, so when I go back home, it's often like a reality check. It's like, oh yeah, they still believe this stuff. Like they haven't grown out of this. And so there were just so many things that year. And so I kind of became obsessed with, well, how do I help people see through all the bullshit that we've been raised to believe and that's been handed down culturally or politically or whatever it is. And so the book kind of, became, this idea of how far back do we have to help people to step to see that our most ingrained beliefs have been sold to us by somebody. And so, that's kind of how it started. I didn't know it was going to be a book exactly. I thought it would be more of like a workshop or a presentation to get through to all of my friends that were driving me crazy. And so like, this is how you tell what's reality. And so it kind of started there and then became a manuscript and then a book proposal. And when I entered it into the book pipeline contest, I gave no indication that I wanted it to be illustrated, but the idea was always that I wanted a graphic component to it. There's a great book. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it called Economics by Michael Goodwin, Economics IX at the end. And it's kind of like a graphic novel of the entire history of economics, world economics. And it's fascinating. Like it's got such a whimsy and a sense of humor about it, because what would otherwise be a very dry topic is like a lot of fun. He has a lot of fun with it. And so I kind of thought I wanted that sense of humor and whimsy with something like this, because, it makes the medicine go down a little easier maybe. Mm-hmm. But also I knew I wanted this critical thinking learning tool that I used throughout the book, the pie charts. And so I knew there needed to be some type of graphic representation. So whether it was fully illustrated or spot illustrated, I was totally flexible with it. And the publisher and my agent both thought that, having it fully illustrated was the way to go. It makes it more accessible to a wider audience. Mm-hmm. And there's a trend now with a lot of these heavy nonfiction books like Sapiens or Lies My Teacher Told Me that, they're adapting them to graphic novel form. And so we kind of thought, well, let's just go straight to that.
Yeah. What's impressive is how it's so dense. And I mean that as a compliment. It's just that you've packed in so much material, but it never feels weighed down because of the illustrations. And I don't know if most people are visual learners. I'm a visual learner. So if this were just a textbook of sorts, As good as the writing is, honestly, too, I don't know if it has the same effect. I think we need to see these things and see little charts and little quizzes, even that you or tests that you kind of integrate too.
Yeah, the charts, the graphs, there are tons of tables.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to include as many of those as I could because they do illustrate the point. You know, when you see the poverty rate on a graph, or you see how the U.S. is an outlier in gun deaths, you know, like we're up
Sure.
in the top corner and we're in the top right corner, and every single other country is in the bottom left corner. Like, you know, it just the charts and graphs paint a clear picture of certain trends that aren't as obvious, probably, and taxes and inequality and that kind of stuff too. And the more charts and graphs I had, then the less text that took up. So it was like it was a double. You know, it also helped. It did more of the heavy lifting, so I wouldn't have to describe these things.
Sure. And Michelle's your kids started reading it, didn't they?
Oh yeah. So I think that's one of the great things about this is that the illustrations, I mean, they're really attractive, you know, and my 10-year-old was sitting here while I was frantically doing last minute preparations for this conference, and your book arrived right in time. And you know, here I am just like not even paying attention to her, and she comes over and sits down and she just picks it up and she's just like pouring through it. And then I don't know how long she was sitting there next to me like reading it. But yeah, I look over and I'm like, "Oh, do you like that?" She's like, "Yeah, I do."
Was she able to understand it and follow it then? It wasn't too over her head.
Oh yeah, so my kids are really like politically oriented. I mean, you're talking about 2016 election. I mean, that election made at the time, hold on, I don't remember how old he was, but my now 13-year-old son made him really political that election because he grew up at that, in that atmosphere, in that climate. And so, but all of my kids have, pretty interesting views of the world. So
I understand that's very common with the youth.
Yes, it's true.
Depends on the city. Yeah.
The youth that grew up during that administration,
it really did. It transformed like the generation because I think,
galvanized them.
Yeah, completely.
In a way that we never were politically or would have considered it. But
no, absolutely. I mean, so I'm here in Texas, right? And I didn't grow up in Austin though. So when I was in my early teens, I was in Odessa and then in Temple, Texas. And those are both very, very, very conservative, very, you're talking about politics, religion, and culture intertwined. I mean, it's like, oh, you better be voting for George W. Bush because he is against abortion, ergo, you are not breaking God's laws, that kind of thing, right? But I really like the quote that's on basically your first page of your introduction, which is titled "Post-Truth Nation." If you don't mind, I'm going to read it real quick. So this is Brandolini's Law, and it says, "The amount of energy needed to refute bullshit is an order of magnitude bigger than that needed to produce it." And I just want you to comment on that a little bit because as someone who does work in like academia and trying to put out what is factual, what is correct, what is historically accurate, it is extremely exhausting.
Yeah, exhausting is a good word. Well, the quote, we'll start with the quote. So I feel like the quote is kind of an updated version of that old quote that's attributed to Mark Twain that I think it's attributed to him that, the lie can get halfway around the world before the truth puts its boots on or something like that. Or something to that effect. And it's so true because, truth is often nuanced and complex and lies are often black and white, and they often appeal to our basest instincts and, almost the lowest common denominator kind of. And so, it's so easy for human beings to hate other human beings or to dislike people that are not like us or to like people or give them the benefit of the doubt when they are like us. And I mean, we're full of biases and prejudices and self-preservation. And so, it's easy for us to believe things that aren't true if it makes us feel good or if it makes us dislike people we already dislike, or, if we don't have to change our mind, or we don't have to update our opinions, or whatever it is. And so that's what makes us so susceptible to misinformation. And a lot of the ones that are spreading it, they know the science and the psychology behind it. And so, like I think of Russian disinformation campaigns, like, when they started seeding the disinformation about like AIDS, the AIDS virus being a product of, the US government or something, or, it makes it, if there's already a history, there's already suspicion, there's already lots of anti-government sentiment in the 80s. It makes it easy to believe if it taps into biases and prejudices that are already existing. And so, I think we see it today with, since 2016 with immigrants, with the anti-immigrant stance that came out of 2016 and in the years after. Again, it makes us very easy to dislike or be suspicious of people that are not like us. Even though when, crime statistics paint a very different picture, the more immigrants in a community, usually the lower the crime rate does. The more immigrants in a community, the safer the community. Like it's just so counterintuitive. But again, the fear of the other, our fight or flight response, is very easily manipulated. And so, it's very easy to appeal to our fears or our angers or whatever it is. And the majority of the time, it's the areas that have never been exposed to immigrants that are usually the most anti-immigrant, like everything else, whether it's anti-gay or anti-Jewish. Usually it's fear of the other, and those things are strongest in areas where they've never met one.
Well, this being an arts podcast too is why I really wanted to have you on and to speak to how the current political climate, and by current, I mean really the last, since 2016, let's be honest, right? Really it started kind of in 2015 when in the lead up to the election, when we weren't sure if would be running and so forth. When all of a sudden everyone was interested in politics and everyone became an expert, right, in everything. And then they became an expert in COVID, and they became an expert in foreign affairs. And then they were an expert in Ukraine. And now I think it's whatever it is this week. It's become a litany of things. But there's this sort of, I don't want to call it a movement, but this is like this shift of interest wears on you after a while, to where eventually it's going to come in cycles, right? And the American, I'm speaking not global, but speaking for Americans only, the interest wanes, right? Now that once Biden was elected, I feel like the interest in politics waned again, right? CNN had to restructure and kind of take a new approach, for example, right? Because it wasn't, they weren't getting viewers hating on Trump all the time. Fox shifted a little bit, the media landscape shifted. And I think the arts has kind of shifted when I talk about fiction and publishing and movies and TV. Where do you see like the next few years? Do you see this, I'm going to call it chaos. I don't know if it's that dramatic, but this chaos getting worse, or do you think that it's going to get better? Ugh. We're going to be more open-minded, and we're going to refute 5,000 years of human history and all get along.
Good question, because I guess one of the things that's surprised me the most out of the last, few years, 7 years or so, is that every time I think something drastic happens is finally going to curb all this chaos, or be a wake-up call, or have a mea culpa, or or kind of redirect some of the focus. It has not happened. Like, the January 6th, so many things, and each time it's progressively worse. And you think, okay, finally, they're going to straighten up now, or they're going to get their shit straight, or they're going to be held accountable. And it doesn't happen. And that's the part, until there's real accountability with all of this stuff, whether it's election lies or, denying the truth when you know the truth, but you're still spreading a lie, which I guess the best example at the moment is the Dominion voting systems and Fox News. But, like there still hasn't really been accountability for the election lies, for the insurrection, all of the misdeeds of the Trump years, although we do look like we may be at the beginning of some justice with some of these things. But until there is, it just seems like all of the rules are thrown out the window because you can get away with anything. And I feel like people are grasping to keep up with what this means as the rules of decorum are rewritten each day.
Do you feel like the Trump years literally woke up the American people to like politicians in general, not just politicians, but like propagandists and easy influencers and the whole lot, just like made them a little bit more refined so we can spot it earlier?
Yeah, I think it's it was 16. When was Brexit? That was 2016,
yes.
Right? Too, right? Yeah, I feel like there were a few back-to-back things that made us wake up. I think one was Brexit, because what drove people to vote against it was all the propaganda demonizing immigrants, basically keeping the UK white, Syrian refugees, whatever it looked like. So, and people couldn't see through the propaganda that was there to manipulate them. And I think we had like a 1-2 punch with Brexit and then Trump. Everything out of Trump's mouth was a lie. Like none of it was true. The demonizing, the fear mongering, smearing Hillary Clinton. There was just so much misinformation. And I think why the country was in such a state of shock after the election is that it was more that they couldn't believe so many other Americans could be so misled or not see the con man for the con, like could see the con for what it was. And it was kind of like, I got lots of emails. I wrote a Huffington Post piece called Post-Truth Nation that went viral. And it was kind of about like how did we not see all of these lies and all this misinformation? And I kept getting a lot of like a lot of emails and messages about it. Like people are just amazed, like their family, their parents, like can't see through all of the BS. And like, they're like, what do we do? How do we get through people? And that kind of became like, I guess one of my, obsessions was trying to figure that out. And the answer is so not simple, which kind of the book. So why the book's so dense, because it's part, we need a lesson in media literacy. We need to be able to tell what is advertising, what is news, what is marketing, what is, urban legend. Like we can't differentiate it. We kind of think every message we see in the media is news, but it's not. The majority of it's misinformation. It's somebody trying to sell us something. And so, we don't recognize a publicity stunt for what it is. We don't recognize these things. We're so indoctrinated with PR campaigns that we don't know that those are slogans and, they're not solutions.
And we're all susceptible to it.
Yeah, like the good guy with a gun myth, that's a marketing slogan that was developed by the NRA's advertising agency. Oh. The only thing that stops a good guy with a gun is a bad guy with a gun. But we take that as a solution, and it's not. It's a branding slogan to sell more guns. Anyway, so media literacy is part of it. I feel like that's kind of the first part. And the second part is like a psychology lesson. We need to understand our own biases and why we're more likely to believe things that are positive about our in-groups, people that think and look like we do. And we're more likely to think bad things about people in the out-groups, those people that don't look and think like me. And we're very easy to divide for political gain or corporate gain or whatever by our groups. And so, they're just ripe for exploitation. And that's what Donald Trump really fed on, was using a lot of the fear mongering and the lies to divide people, to make Americans fearful of immigrants, to make whites fearful of blacks and Mexicans and people that didn't look like them. And we can be so easily manipulated because most of us aren't aware of all the cognitive biases that we carry, confirmation bias to priming to there's just so many, that's why I have like a wheel in the book. There's like 100 different types of biases.
Right.
And then the other part of the psychology lesson is, emotional awareness. And in this country, we're not very emotionally aware. I feel like you can kind of see it every time there's an explosion on an airplane where a passenger's unruly, or another person shoots up a school. Like, we have very little emotional awareness. And so understanding when our emotions are, evoked, what's evoking them, trying to tame them and label them and understand kind of the subtext of our daily lives, which we're not used to doing. We don't really have emotional intelligence classes. And so
do you think there's a root origin to that? Because the best type of storytelling has conflict, right? You could argue the only real type of storytelling has conflict. So we kind of feed off that, and we want that really for entertainment. I feel like so many people politically, they get into these disagreements because there's a certain, this sounds perverse, but there's a certain entertainment value to it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right, because that's a component of story and storytelling. The problem with network news these days is that they're using that formula as opposed to informing us. The ratings are higher if they can show conflict. If they can, it's the same with social media. The more fear-based or anger-based, the algorithms are looking for things that engage people the most, and that's the most emotional content. So, a nice, friendly story about, a young boy who helps an old lady is nice and stuff. But if you have some type of misinformation about an immigrant targeting white girls in your town that's completely made up, that's going to get all of the, people are fearful and they're angry and they're, so the content that gets shared is either the incendiary stuff or the made up stuff that elicits the biggest emotional reaction. And so that's why people are going down these like rabbit holes, because the algorithms are just showing you more and more of this content, more and more of this extreme content to play on your emotions and to get the shares. And that's why, you kind of see democracy struggling across the globe. It's been
but part of that's our fault though, right? Like, we're the ones clicking ultimately. True. We're the ones fueling it. We're the ones tweeting about it. We're the ones giving bad people a platform.
True. But it's definitely.
But I hear
the social media companies know they're doing this. So the algorithm changed in 2010, Facebook and YouTube and all that, and it used to show us more stuff from our peer group. I don't remember how the algorithm worked.
Yeah.
But when they changed the algorithm to basically show us the stuff that gets shared the most, what gets shared the most are the lies and misinformation and the fear mongering and the hate, and the bad actors have learned how to use that to their advantage, smearing opponents get death threats. You look at the way, the fake news type of things travel. You look at all these fake controversies of the last 10, 15 years, like Acorn, which tended to be BS, Acorn is, the organization that used to help minority outreach. And then they were targeted by conservative activists with all these doctored tapes.
Right.
And the doctored tapes made it look like they were up to bad stuff. But then, so Acorn got defunded. They went away, no more minority outreach. And come to find out, it was all bullshit. It was political activists trying to create a crisis where there wasn't one for political advantage. And I feel like we're seeing that all the time. The migrant caravan that they were all worried about, as if it were something that didn't happen all the time. But, so these manufactured crises are very common, especially for partisan outlets and partisan networks that need their audience to be fearful. They need to keep them coming back. It's almost like an endorphin rush. There's a really good book called Foxocracy, which by Tobin Smith, I think. And he was at Fox for 10 or 15 years, but he was, he laid out the tribal warfare playbook, and it's like a script. It's like demonize your opponents, get the fear rush, get the, it was like a chemical breakdown of the way they manipulate their audience to keep them coming back. And, we see that with the election lies, because now they've created a monster that won't accept reality or facts. And so they have to keep lying, because when they tell them the truth, they get death threats and they get, hate mail, and they can't control the monster they've created. And so, I think it's to be determined what happens when, you take advantage of these systems and networks. It makes it very hard to change course, because you've created, people who are now addicted to that lie or that, whatever you're selling. And so, I think it's just way more complex than just sharing things like, we do the sharing, but it's the people creating, deliberately creating false content are the ones that are really to blame, especially when they know it's false and they're doing it strictly to manipulate.
I think I have too many questions now, so I have no idea even where to go next. But I think, forgive me that my thoughts are going all over the place, because I'm a historian of radio broadcasting, right? And so
she has a book coming out soon. Sorry, go ahead.
So
we can talk about that.
So, but I liken social media and this phase that we're in right now, and which is a pretty, early phase in social media's history, to the beginnings of radio broadcasting. Because when radio broadcasting first came out, it was chaotic too. And Marconi was just I'm just going to get radio going, everywhere that I possibly can. And it wasn't until the BBC actually was born in the 20s that we actually have some semblance of sanity and thought. What exactly is this medium, and why do we want it? What are we going to use it for? And they kind of realized the sanctity of the microphone, and so from the very beginning, when the BBC was originally founded, they were we're not going to have commercials, no commercials whatsoever. And they very specifically pointed to America and said, we do not want to be like those Americans.
Why is that?
Because they realized it was the commercials were creating this noise and, influencing people just for commerciality's sake. Right. And they wanted very clearly they really set out to be an educational tool. And, that's very noble, right? So this kind of harkens back to, what you were mentioning about media literacy. Not that they were necessarily talking about media literacy, but they were talking about an educational space. And so maybe it was boring, maybe it was staid, but it was education for the masses that they were going for. And so then I think now to social media, and it's like the Wild West. And it's this whole new, it's not new, right? But in terms of the long view of history, it's new. We're sitting here talking about this now, but 5 years from now, someone might actually figure out a way to tame it. I don't know, to civilize it in some way. But for now, what is the path to that? What is our next step? Where do you see social media kind of going? It is this monster right now, but can it evolve?
Yeah. Speak on the advertising. Part of the problem when you have commercials or advertising, then you have to then tailor your news to keep those advertisers. So if you're reliant on their money, then you don't speak bad about them, which means the more corporations, the more mergers and acquisitions, the more Disney buys all of these networks. Why ABC is not going to run a negative story about Disney? So therefore the news gets very limited. And so that's why it's dangerous to have, too much concentrated ownership, like Rupert Murdoch. And so there are so many things that we could do that would help. So it has to be a multi-pronged approach. So, but there has to be corporate responsibility and social responsibility, but then there has to be political regulation as well. If we still enforced antitrust laws, then we wouldn't have these mega mergers and these powerful billionaires buying media outlets and turning them into propaganda machines. So there has to be like more competition. There has to be some sort of regulation. We used to have a fairness doctrine, which meant that the airwaves couldn't be partisan. If you covered a hot topic or a political debate, then you had to have both sides of the debate. And it never really had to be enforced. But then in the 80s, the legislature tried to codify it in the law, and the Reagan administration killed it. And then with the death of the fairness doctrine, overnight, you had all these talk radio stations, and like 9 out of 10 were conservative.
Yeah.
And they weren't news outlets. They were opinion journalism, shock jocks that basically spread hate. I just finished reading another book about this, and like Rush Limbaugh is the one that comes to mind. And he's a great example. It's not like he was reporting news or facts. He did nothing but give his opinion all day. And it was, like the type of opinion that kind of speaks hate into existence.
Right.
Like, he's demonizing people. He's cutting people down. He's not educating. He's not informing. He's not like NPR.
No.
But people had this broadcast into their homes every day. So if you're getting this anti-government, anti-Clinton, anti-whatever message every day, then like it's going to affect you. It's going to brainwash you. I mean, brainwash is a strong term, but I think that's where so much of the Hillary hate comes from, because so much of the stuff levied against her is usually not based in reality. It's just a lot of hate. And people often can't pinpoint why they hate her. And so, if you can't pinpoint or say why you hate someone, then chances are you've been sold that hate from somebody and don't even realize it. And so, so with all that talk radio, Fox News kind of came out of that. And so when you have these types of media outlets that spread the hate and misinformation, it muddies the water. So I think part of the problem is trying to figure out how you rein them in. Like if they broadcast lies, then take away their, their revoke their license, take away their.
How do you define though?
Michelle, no, I was just going to say, so if they broadcast lies, take it away. Okay, great. But freedom of speech.
Right. I know. It opens up a whole nother. Well, then they can't call themselves news. Like, if they call themselves news, then they have to prove that what they're doing is news.
I have a very similar comment to that, though. How do you define what is truth and what is not truth? Because
right, that's part of the problem, because
which is a crazy thing to ask, by the way, and I fully admit that, but it's true, right? Or is it? I don't know.
Yes, to me, truth is something that you can prove.
Is true.
Truth is whatever the facts and data and science says is true. But usually what's untrue, you can also prove.
Right.
So, you can lie about the election being stolen, but yet you can't prove that because the data does not support that. So, I get the Fox Dominion thing is such a great example because it proves they knowingly lied. It's not that they were unsure, but even if you're unsure, well, then that's not news. Like you can't say, oh, I'm hearing this, or the internet's this, or people think this. Well, that's not news or information. That has no role on a news outlet. If you're not giving us a deeper understanding, they should not be spreading rumors, unverified reports. And some outlets are better than others, but it's that infotainment. And we can't tell the difference, the audience, because again, we're not really trained. If something says news,
we assume it's news.
We assume it's news.
Right.
We don't think news is a branding slogan.
Right.
Which it is now.
The most annoying person out there right now is the genre, it's usually male, who is just, I'm just asking questions. Just asking questions.
Right.
However, fundamentally, I do agree with that. You should ask questions, but don't ask dumb questions that are leading and that the answer to, and that you're trying to get something out of it, right? And that's what that type of person is. I worry about a landscape Look, I watched CNN. I was watching flipping back and forth to both CNN and Fox News during the Trump years, just because I wanted to curious. And I was probably addicted to the little dopamine hits of conflict, right? But CNN was looking back, and I kind of knew it then too. It was pretty much garbage. Don Lemon was not good. Really wasn't very good. The primetime hour was pretty much the left's version of Fox News at that point. CNN now that they've gotten rid of Zucker and what's his name is leading CNN now, CNN has never been better. I've been watching CNN for 20, 30 years.
You think?
I feel
like I've heard the opposite, but I don't
exactly
necessarily
because you know why? It's boring. It's boringer now than it was before because you don't have Don Lemon shaking his head and talking about all the salacious things Trump did that day. It's not as entertaining. It's entertaining to me. There's a more balanced approach to it. They're actually covering like more interesting topics. I'm talking about the primetime hour, daytime.
I've been watching it too. Like I have been watching it lately.
Yeah.
And I
do you feel like it's better than 5 years ago?
I don't know. Honestly, at the moment, I feel like CNN has a bit of an identity crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the nighttime lineup keeps changing, and they're trying to figure out what they are.
Yeah.
I do like Allison Camerot and the other ones when there's kind of a round table and they're all talking and weighing in.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the people talking and weighing in are experts.
Yeah.
What drives me crazy is when they have the token political pundit who is doing nothing but repeating the talking points that he was given by his party, and none of them are viable or accurate or have any place in news.
Mm-hmm.
And that drives me crazy, especially when they say, I'm trying to think of one of the most current ones. And you could tell because whoever they have on, they're all saying the exact same thing as if they're reading from the same script.
Yeah.
But when they say something like, look, 80% of Republicans think, Joe Biden didn't win the election or Trump won the election. And it's like, yes, because you're telling them that. Like, that's not a sentence out of your mouth that should be here because you're using that as if it's a rationale or an explanation for, voter fraud or whatever, when we shouldn't care what they think. Like that shouldn't be
data. I mean, it's not real. Like it's meaningless.
It's not data. It's literally but you have to, but again, why are they saying that? Because they can't say that Trump won the election because that's a lie. So what they say instead is, well, but people think, and it's like, well, yeah, because you've told them your echo chamber has sold this message. And so you can't now use that as justification for whatever.
Mm-hmm. And let's pivot to something less controversial. Racism. Okay. Now, I think we don't have to talk about that.
Let's go to abortion next.
Abortion and racism. Let's just throw them all out.
Let's go to the fact that conservative state governments are starting to try to interfere with universities.
Yeah.
Book banning. The overreach has gotten bolder than it has ever been. I think the Trump years emboldened.
It did.
There's no repercussions. There's no shame anymore. It is an all-out assault
on democracy, on truth. Actually, it's an assault on truth.
Well, especially if you're banning a library book, then yeah. I mean, that's, the definition of trying to hide the truth. And I think, again, they're emboldened. And it's not just that they're trying to maintain a conservative status quo. No. They are actively regressing. They're the opposite of progress. They are trying to regress.
Determinedly
back to 50, 60 years ago.
They're digging their heels in and they're we're going back to horseless carriages, y'all. But that's weird because they don't
women
want to.
in the home. And
it's so contradictory, right, for them to do that, because the whole shtick of the right is freedom of speech. You should be able to do this. You should be able to do anything you want. This is America. And they're out here banning books,
Right. Well, I would argue that all of that that's not what the right believes. That's their marketing.
Ooh.
So I would say, the left and the right, and I guess this is a good opportunity where I could talk about the origin of the left and the right, if you guys would want to hear it.
Let's dip our toe. Go ahead.
Okay. So, so there's a real good reason why the right is doing what it's doing. So most people don't realize that the whole notion of left and right kind of came from the French Revolution. So when King Louis XVI called a meeting to handle the country's fiscal crisis, the power brokers, the clergy, the moneyed interest who agreed with the king assembled to his right. And the commoners, the lower middle class laborers who disagreed with the monarchy, all assembled to his left. So this division between left and right is virtually the same today. It's historically left is the working class, and then right is the business class. Left is the poor, right is the wealthy. Left is the powerless, right is the powerful. Or in Bernie Sanders' terms, the 99% and the 1%. So the reason we don't view the two political parties this way in America is a testament to marketing and propaganda, to me, and the Democratic Party's failure to offer policies that are different from the right. And the right was known, or rather, the Republican Party was known as the party of business until the civil rights era. And that's when things really changed and they kind of rebranded themselves. And so when I say left and right, I'm not talking about our specific political parties as much as just the left and right in general. So propaganda originated within the right. It was an indoctrination tool of the Catholic Church. And I was raised Catholic. They coined the term propaganda, which literally means spreading the faith. So they're not spreading the truth. They're not spreading facts. They're spreading things they want us to take on faith. Because at the time, the church was trying to fight something that threatened its power, Protestantism. So propaganda and myths have always been a tool of the powerful or the ruling class to control the masses. And not just the church, but the monarchies or the empires, or today the wealthy and the business class, otherwise the corporatocracy. So the corporate class has always been entwined with right-wing politics since the Middle Ages. So the merchants and craftspeople, as they began climbing the rungs from lower to middle class, the feudal lords who live off peasants' labor saw the power diminish as the former peasants went into business for themselves, becoming the craftspeople and traders. Propaganda originates with the business class and then the politicians that they buy off. But propaganda isn't just used in the defense of profits. It's also used to fight social movements that threaten the very same power structures. So think Blue Lives Matter to undercut Black Lives Matter, or voter ID laws to restrict the votes of minorities, or anti-trans bills to delegitimize transgender folks. And the list goes on. So basically, what the propaganda will serve to either preserve the status quo or to deny a minority group its rights when it comes to social issues. But in the simplest of terms, you basically have people getting into politics to solve a problem, and then people getting into politics to ensure that problem never gets solved because the solution threatens someone's business interests.
So is this why Trump is so good at branding?
I think it's why the right is so good at branding, because they realize the power. Like Frank Luntz wrote the book on it.
Because Make America Great Again is just way better than riding with Biden or whatever that was, which I barely remember.
Make America Great Again. I actually talk about that in the book. That's always been a code for keep America white or make it white again. Reagan used it and Hitler used it, make Germany great again. It's not like it was a new phrase. It's a phrase that's always been around to fight whatever progress or equality looks like at that time. But in this country, it's usually a dog whistle for white. Yeah.
And then the other thing that really made me mad, but perhaps wouldn't have mattered if I were on Trump's side. He commandeered the whole hashtag Stand With Ukraine, and that idea of stand with Trump. And I was just floored that he would have the gall to even somehow elevate himself above the death of thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people in a war, a full out war. And it just blew my mind.
Really? See, I feel like that seems like that's
total. No, it's on point. But at the same time, it's just
so self-centered,
extremely self-centered.
But his Truth Social, again, branding. It's like Fox News. The branding of again, I can't imagine there is any truth on that whatsoever. Right? Because no one on there is looking for truth.
Right.
They're looking for,
Yeah.
The cult leader. They're they're looking for his,
Exactly.
raise him up. So it's all bullshit.
One of our final panels that we had at this conference was post-truth public diplomacy. That was I think the second to last panel that we had, and it was really great. We had 2 historians, a philosopher, a psychologist, a comms, specialist. It was fantastic. A great discussion. And then ultimately, Dr. Jeremy Suri, who's a pretty well-known presidential historian, said, well, maybe what we really need then is, he just took a couple words away from post-truth public diplomacy, very cleverly said truth diplomacy. And I was like, at that time, I was like, yeah, that's a great one. I love it. But then now I'm like, hang on. Trump has really made us go, well, what is truth? Because you brought up the whole idea of alternative truths and alternative facts. And whereas before it was truth is truth. And you were talking about in the very beginning, lies are black and white. Well, I used to think truth was black and white, and it's totally not, apparently. And so, what is the solution? Where's the healing? Where's the internal diplomacy, the intra diplomacy that we can have in this country? I mean, how do we even go about it?
And if I can quickly add one more thing, where do we go now to find those as unbiased a source as possible?
Well, I think, part of the problem is if you're living in 2 different realities, it's hard to bridge the gap when, we should be arguing over solutions to problems. We should not be arguing over what the problem is or if there is a problem.
Correct.
And, I feel like this is, the faults between the 2 parties are definitely not equal. At the moment, one of the parties is very out of touch with reality because reality does not work for them. Reality is not on their side. And in the past, when, you could hold people accountable because they had shame, they would acknowledge, okay, Nixon, I made a mistake, I'm stepping away. It was a different situation. Whereas now,
shameless.
Because of partisan media and because of the internet and because you can find your version of truth anywhere, there's no longer that personal accountability because now you just deny. Oh, that's not, it's denial. It's, you make up your own version of events. And you could pinpoint to the media or just talk to the media outlet that's going to back you up. So I think it's really hard when, so many of us are brainwashed to believe things that help a certain group of people in power. And to me, until they have some sort of responsibility, till they're, again, there's a come to Jesus moment, I don't see things changing in the immediate future, until there's some sort of accountability.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that's the main question.
The big problem too that I see is that one person's huge social problem is another person's not problem, right? What's the opposite of problem? Not problem, right? There's a word for that I'm missing. It's a Friday.
Okay.
But you look at it with the drag queen shows. You see it with the gas ovens. You see it with, you know what I mean? It's
Well, it's because
gun debate.
Again,
it's the same thing.
It's anti everything because they no longer stand for something. So they move their base by, it's a concept called rejectionist voting. You don't have to stand for anything. All you have to do is stand against your opponent. So if you continually demonize your opponent, then you can make everybody hate them. They don't have to like you. And so to me, that's been a right-wing tactic since conservative radio. It's almost like that's become their platform. They're not standing for anything anymore. And even when they claim to stand for these things,
it's really against something.
Their voting record even flies in the face. I mean, family values or whatever it is, smaller government. No, traditionally Republicans always make the government larger.
Yes.
They cause the deficits. everything they run against are usually problems they've created, or everything they run claiming they are things they don't do once they're in office. And so again, it's more branding, and they're just anti whatever. And so every time the left tries to go to a middle ground, they're never going to go there, at least not at the current time, because that would ruin their model. How do you be against something? Mm-hmm. So then politics just gets further to the right if you keep trying to reach across the aisle and they keep denying it. But we don't see it that way because that's not what the branding and the marketing and the conversations and the and all that talk is. So, you know, I do kind of feel like until the right is willing to embrace reality, even if it means losing a little power, you know, I don't know how things change, because basically, you know, they're like, I saw a great description in a book. I'd pull it up real quick if I could find it, but it was kind of like, you know, it's like a toddler with a match, you know, standing in front of gasoline. It's like, you know, like something like, and, you know, unless you say I'm king of the ice cream mountain, like I'm going to throw it. And you can't say there's no such thing as an ice cream mountain because you're dealing with a toddler. Like, mm-hmm. And so you have to appease the toddler so he doesn't burn the house down.
I can picture that illustration in the book too. Unless it's in there and I missed it.
I probably read it afterwards now. I remember thinking like, wow, that totally like kind of describes the current state of things. And until, you know, like every time like Nancy Pelosi's husband getting attacked, like these things happen because of the bullshit they're spewing. And you think, oh, finally, they're going to step back. Oh, finally, they're going to be responsible. And no, it just, they keep pushing it. So short of someone actually dying, I don't know what's going to make them curb their, you know.
Somebody dying isn't going to change anything either.
No.
Rhetoric.
Right.
I mean, well, if it's one of them, maybe.
Maybe.
If it was Paul Pelosi, no.
Yeah.
But
no.
If it's, but, you know, you look at even in the Republican states, you know, or the states where they're having the mass shootings, like it's going to have to affect them personally in a negative way before they do the right thing. I feel like
we had an intelligence officer from Army Futures Command speaking on a panel, Digital Media and the Future of Warfare. Mm-hmm. And basically, you know, he was very pessimistic on the whole. I mean, he's like, you know, I'm listening to all these great conversations about disinformation and what can be done and yada, yada, yada. And he's like, honestly, I don't think it's as great as all these conversations are. They're not going to do any good until we have a version of a 9/11. You know, nothing major is going to be done at the government level to actually address any of the information chaos, any of the destructive, you know, behavior.
Exactly.
And I personally completely agree with that, but I heard plenty of people there, and we had people on both sides at this conference, and I heard plenty of people that were like, oh, whatever, you know, he doesn't know anything. But I completely concur. The problem is, though, that 9/11 happened in a very different media environment. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm worried about. We have another 9/11. And we're going to mourn about it. And we're going to be so upset for like one day, maybe two, maybe three, if you're really lucky. And then there's going to be lots of other stuff that happens. And in the speed of information that we have, it's just going to, you know, consume us. Something else will.
Yeah.
And so I fear that the impetus and the impact and, you know, the urgency to do something as a result of, like, you know, have another, you know, war on terror type kind of campaign won't actually ever come out of another 9/11 if it were to happen now. What do you think?
Well, I think that, I look at it more like, I agree. I look at it more like the 60s. Like you look at everything that had to happen in the 60s for the turmoil to die down. Like JFK was killed, and that's probably the only reason the Civil Rights Act passed. And Johnson got reelected. And then, but there were riots, but so many people died or were assassinated during the 60s. I mean, there was so much racial hate. Nearly all the violence, all the beatings, all the killings, all the bombs were white racists trying to prevent civil rights from happening. And until enough people of importance died, the tenor did not change. So like MLK died, the other Kennedy died. Like there were so many deaths that by the end of the 60s, things calmed down, and it almost feels like that's what it's going to take. And that's 9/11. Like, yeah, it was huge, but we don't know what something drastic would look like now.
Exactly,
If the insurrection, if they'd have killed Mike Pence, let's say they did hang him, then we may not be having any of these talks. That could have been, because again, then you have something very undeniable. The mob killed someone, and they killed the second most powerful person in the country. Then I don't think you would have had all of the rewriting history, because again, the consequences were too grave to deny things. And so, I don't know who knows what would happen or what it would look like. But until something irreversible really happens, I don't know what it'll change, because, we could talk about social responsibility and corporate responsibility and all of that. But at the end of the day, there's only so much the responsible half of the country can do,
right?
If the toddler still has a match.
That's right.
All right.
Yeah. And on that note,
well, hey, we need a somber moment of silence to absorb everything we've discussed and everything we didn't cover. But
this is amazing. I could keep talking about this for a long
these are things
time.
I talk about all the time. Like, this is what me and my friends talk about. Like, regularly.
No.
So
I've been talking about how much money the Barbie movie is going to make in theaters. You want to pivot?
Oh my God, there's a Barbie movie?
Yeah. See, this is very interesting to me too.
Have you not seen the trailer?
Yeah.
Good Lord, I don't watch things like that.
The
Mario movie, however, I am taking my kids to go see.
Yeah, I saw it.
Don't tell them. Yeah.
I think you'll enjoy it.
I've seen the trailer for the Barbie movie, and I'm curious because of who's making it. It could be subversive and
it will be. I'm not saying it can be subversive. I just don't understand who the audience is besides adult women. And if it's adult women, that's fine, but you're not going to make $1 billion, I don't think. So right now I estimate it's somewhere between 300 or 400 million and 93 trillion. So in that general range.
I have no idea. You're right though. Who is the movie for? Is it for it? Probably not for girls.
Well, it's PG-13. You can't really. No one's going to bring their young kids.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I don't know, but you know what's most important? How to Win the War on Truth: An Illustrated Guide to How Mistruths Are Sold, Why They Stick, and How to Reclaim Reality, which is now online, but also I think in every bookstore, because this is true. I was in Culver City a week ago for a meeting, and I think it's a new bookstore there off of Culver Boulevard. And I'm walking by and I see your book just sticking out at me, gleaming like a shaft of light was on it through the window. And I'm like, I know that guy, which was kind of awesome. Strangely exciting. Just seeing a book in a bookstore makes me. Well, thank you for coming, Sam. This was enlightening. We could do a whole podcast series about all this stuff, and probably get very angry about it at the end of it somehow. But this was a refreshing conversation.
Great.
No notes.
Great. We still didn't come up with any solutions, but
we have no solutions
whatsoever.
It's like a microcosm of America, this podcast. Next episode of Polygots for One, we are going to have mystery guests. Can't tell you yet.
Oh yeah, another mystery guest.
It's a big surprise. I keep saying mystery guest because I haven't really booked anybody yet.
That's not true. You did.
Oh, I did. Oh my God, we really do have mystery guests.
Okay, that's getting cut out. Although that's kind of fun.
And he's great too, sort of. He's a pain in the ass,
right.
but he'll be good. We will see you then.
Bye for now.
No one knows how to end this Okay. Beginnings and endings. Very bad.
It's
All
fun
right.
though. It's fun to just let it die away.